Thank you very much.
Wow, he did a great job.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Konnichiwa, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sayuri Diamond, as Mr. Ragnar introduced me, and I was a former managing editor of the Japan Times. Today, I'm really honored to, be moderating this special session, and with a truly inspiring global leader.
Thank you, Sayuri. The honor is all mine.
Thank you. So, let me briefly talk about Madam President. President Tómasdóttir has long been a champion for gender equality, as you know, and she has worked in business and public sector empowering women. And now she is the second female president of Iceland. And Iceland has consistently ranked among the top countries in gender equality. And much of that progress has been driven by a visionary leader like her. So, Madam President, welcome to Japan, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I only have one correction. It's not thanks to the action of me or any one woman in particular. It really is thanks to the solidarity and courage that women overall in Iceland have shown, and the men who, like Ragnar just showed, are willing to support disobedient women like us.
That's true. Thank you for mentioning that. So, I'm sure everyone is keen to learn from her and also about Iceland, and also her personal history. I'll get to it later. But today, I think I'd like to first start with Iceland. And let me introduce some of my research today about Iceland. Iceland National Parliament has 63 members, and 29 of them are women, which is 46%, and that actually compared with Japan's dismal number of 15.7% in the lower house. We only have 15.7% of women in the lower house. And also in Iceland, 6 out of 11 cabinet ministers are women, whereas in Japan, only 2, I think, we need to work on. So anyway, and also you have 3-party coalition government right now, and 3-party leaders are all women. It's very surprising and amazing achievement, I think. But I think the Iceland didn't come this far in just one day. So I'd like to hear more about, what are the milestones and policies that helped Iceland improve gender equality.
Thank you, Sayuri, for representing our good numbers and our good story so well. Ragnar did such a good job at summarizing up some of the policies, so I think maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the cultural shift and how that's been driven, because I actually think we need policies and we need structural change. And if I would name the 3 that I think have changed the most for us on that part, I think it is the fact that we decided to give, to really build affordable and easily available childcare infrastructure. And we probably would not have done that if we didn't have so many women in politics, because policy gets created in politics, and what we talk about in politics is reflected in who's at the table, or who's in the room, or who's in the Congress or the Parliament. So that's been very important. The second one, I think, really was the paternity leave. It's so important because I'm a former HR manager early in my career, and when you are trying to hire a person for an important job, and you have a woman and a man, and you think the woman might go away to have a child, right, when she's very valuable, but the man will not, you might prefer the man. But when you know the risk is the same, whether it's a woman or a man, you will hire the qualified candidate. And based on educational number, very often that will be a woman. So I'm sorry to say, but so that's important. But the other thing that we sometimes forget about is that in the home everything changes too, because when fathers have the opportunity to be at home and take care of children, they also learn to cook, they also learn to clean, They also learn to do the work of the home, so the home becomes more equal. So it's leveling the playing field on those two fronts. And then, yeah, I would say those are the two policy things. Culturally, that have changed the most, I think. But there are many others, and Ragnar did a good job. But culture is what matters to me. Shifting norms and assumptions about what a president looks like, or who can be an entrepreneur, or who does the work in the home. I mean, shifting those norms and ideas is what truly creates a gender equal country. And we would not be here this year in 2025 with a 15-year record of closing the gender gap the most in the world, and with a world record in women in leadership posts, if it had not been for the women in Iceland who had the audacity to organize a strike for a full day and show that nothing works when women are not at work. That's just a simple fact we all know, but they showed it. And so everybody kind of had an awakening. And 5 years later, we had the courage to be first, to democratically choose a female president. And a year or 2 and 3 after that, all women political parties came about. And so I think it's been more this sort of cultural movement and almost the disobedience of women.
Disobedience,
yeah. Well-behaved women never changed history, and I need to say this in Japan because you are very well-behaved, and I have utmost respect for that. But if we want to get from 118 to leading, but you do on so many levels. Japan is the global leader in quality. And when you decided to become the global leader in quality, you just did it better than anyone else. And no one has caught up with you. I mean, you're still the leader. So you execute like no other. And I'm absolutely certain when you decide it's time to close the gender gap in this country, you will do it fast, you will leap forward, and you can learn from us, but there may be other answers for you. But one thing is for sure, if we want to grow the economy, and we want to build a strong society and a peaceful world, we need to close the gender gap. It's not just about representation, it's about the values that lie at the heart of our economy and our society. Shifting them is deep cultural work, and very often women and young people are the ones who push it forward. But we need men and boys to be involved too.
I couldn't agree more. And also consciousness, it's that's very important. And I was just wondering, because he also, in opening remarks, he mentioned about the 1975 strike, famous strike that you also mentioned. So that was the turning point, do you think? And also, how old were you at that time, and what did you think of that strike?
It's actually interesting. My cousin, who's almost like my brother, is in the room, so I need to tell the story. It's my mom's birthday, October 24th, so I remember this day very well. I was 7 years old, and my mom was one of 8 sisters and 2 brothers. And that day, they were not doing the baking and cleaning up. The brothers and the husbands were. I might add they were doing a terrible job at it. Absolutely horrendous job. They were no good at this. But at the age of 7, I had never seen this. I had never seen the sisters feeling like they were always loud and strong, but they were particularly courageous and joyful and strong, and there was a special energy in the air. And while the husbands and brothers tried to sort of make fun of them, they were actually the ones that were kind of left out. And this was a new reality for me at the age of 7. So I asked one of my mom's sisters, why are you on a strike? Which is the word they used. Some women called it a day off, some called it a strike. And she said, because we want to show that we matter. And this was very much the day that I began to think about wanting to matter. And I actually think that every single human being wants nothing more than to matter. And what kind of a country or society would not try to let everyone matter? Because you will be as strong as how many people you let matter. And I think Iceland is strong in spite of its size because of this 50-year history that, yes, I think started that day with some crazy women. And they were considered crazy by many. Some were threatened by their husbands. You will not come back home if you go on that strike. Some were threatened that they might lose their jobs. I mean, it took an extraordinary amount of courage to do this in 1975. And they did it with joy and singing and solidarity and courage. And they filled the center of Reykjavik. 90% of women participated. No social media back then, no internet. They organized this in less than a year, and the whole country had to see it.
Organizers.
It can be done in Japan too, just a hint.
90% open number, yeah. So I was wondering how they can mobilize 90% of women. Is there any
We have
trick to
repeated
that?
it a few times since, and we've had great participation. And this year I'm advocating really that we invite boys and men to join us, that we really close not just the gender gap, but the generational gap, even the global gap. We are inviting some global leaders to join us and really turn this into a solidarity moment for gender equality, because gender equality is not just the unique leadership position for Iceland, it really is our strength. It's made our country possible. I go as far as to say that Iceland would be quite impossible if women in Iceland were not at work the way we are.
Well, in Japan, I'd like to, organize that too. Anyway.
Please join us, October
Yes,
24th.
yes, October 24th. A lot of supporters here. Okay, but you mentioned about men also participating in this strike these days. So I'm sure that the role of men are also is important, right? How do you actually engage them into this journey?
This is a topic I think a lot about, because I have spent almost all of my adult life, or even since I was a 7-year-old girl, thinking about gender equality very much from the lens of empowering women and girls. But I'm a mother to a young man and a young woman, and through that journey, they're 21 and 23 now, and through my work in trying to catalyze change in the world, I have increasingly over the last decade or so become worried about the state of men and boys. And I think all of our young people are experiencing a bit of a crisis. Mental health is not where it needs to be. Anxiety, depression, loneliness, addiction of various sorts is on the rise. And we see particularly alarming numbers for boys. And what is happening, I think, and we forget sometimes that boys and men, they have a gender. It's like we think, only women have a gender. Gender is a spectrum. We all have it. Right. And the whole. It's an important realization, but I mean, for a long time I didn't even realize this myself when I championed for women and girls. But we all have a gender, and our economy has gendered ideas, and our society has gendered ideas. And until we can all come to the table and really uproot some of the gendered ideas that are working against Mother Nature, working against humanity, working against the next generation, we are not going to see shared prosperity in a peaceful world. We will not eradicate violence and war without men at the table. It's as simple as that. So I think this is the critical thing. And one is sort of courageous step we took in Iceland was the equal paternity-maternity leave. But we also done something that I have found quite powerful, and I hosted one of those myself, and we call them barbershop breakfast, where we invite men-only conversations about gender equality. And it is very interesting to be in those rooms. Often I've left them on their own when I've had those conversations, but in particular once in 2015, when we celebrated 100-year anniversary of the women's right to vote in Iceland, we invited 100 most powerful men in Iceland. Randomly sort of selected them, but we considered them the 100 most powerful men. And we asked them to have conversations about what is the difference between being a strong man and a good man. And we had really interesting conversations, and several of the men who participated in this conversation wrote me such long letters afterwards about how transformative it was for them, even just to do a 90-minute conversation. We did bring in Gina Davis for the generation of men in leadership. They probably showed up for her. But they stayed for the conversation, so whatever it took. And to tell you the truth, it was transformative. So it doesn't necessarily take that long to help people shift their frame on issues, but you need to create spaces for it. And now more recently I did a conversation at the President's residence in Iceland with only men, 30 of them, of all walks of life, to specifically discuss how we meet what is a growing sense of violence in our society as elsewhere with a different energy. And we talked about how we can all become knights of love instead of being sort of these agents of violence. And it was beautiful. And I would tell this one story because it's stories people remember. There was this gentleman, probably 50s. He had done everything wrong in life, and he admitted this in front of us. We were sitting in a circle, 30 of us, and I almost didn't want him to speak because he was like this big, like really big, and really tattooed, and he scared me, honestly, and I wasn't sure what is he gonna say, so I'm gonna wait a little bit until the good men speak. And then, all of a sudden, I couldn't wait much longer, and then this bulky, strong, tattooed man leaned in and said, I have done everything wrong in my life. I have done drugs, I have been involved in violence, I have broken the law, I have been in jail, I am an addict, and nothing worked to save my soul until I learned about love. And it was through meditation he learned, and he said, then the final saying was so beautiful. He said, now I know I'm a strong man because I have an open and warm heart. So I think there is a huge need to let men be human beings and not live up to the ideals that us women have been saying are wrong, because they're also wrong for men and boys. So I don't think the gender revolution is for women or girls as such. I think it's for a livable, peaceful world, and for a world where everyone gets to thrive, no matter their gender, their sex, their age, their ethnic background, their financial background, or where they happen to be born in the world. This is a revolution that's about a better world, to me.
Wow, it's impressive. It's an impressive story. I'm glad that
that
man was in that room, and
it changed everything in the room. And the young man in particular started opening up a lot after he broke sort of that need to feel like you need to show up as a strong. That being strong is hard. He showed that being strong can be soft. And I think soft power is the very thing that we need more of in this world right now. Hard power is going to mean the end of us. And soft power is something that Iceland and us in the Nordics really know, and soft power is something that us women are more accustomed to bring to the table. So we need more women at the table. I will never stop calling for that. But we need more space for men to also open up parts of them that exist within them, just like strength exists within women.
So I think it's important to just keep conversation with them, so that they can engage, they can be engaged. Okay.
And create some safe spaces, because they don't always want to say this in front of lots of feminists. They've told me that.
Right. We are intimidating, right? The feminists are intimidating.
Fearless women can be intimidating even to other women.
Okay, yes, sure. Okay, so speaking of the intimidation, I'd like to go dive into the personal journey of you. And okay, I'm sure that your audience wants to hear more about your personal history. So I would have questions for that. So you have the unique path from business to civil society, and also you've been during that course of process you've been empowering women. So tell us about how you came to value gender equality and how your advocacy was shaped or formed.
Well, it is a journey, just like the development in Iceland has been a journey. It was for me as well. And I will just tell you that when I was in my 20s and I worked I did my MBA, and in your MBA they teach you to calculate profits and economic growth, but not the health of the planet or healthy societies or all of the things that I think truly matter. So I think we have a problem in the education system, but they teach you basically to lead like men lead. That's what they teach you in business school. And I graduated and went to work in corporate America, and I worked like a man. I was a man in skirt, because that worked. I talked
So you
about.
were expected to be like
That's
that,
how you
right?
were supposed to behave, and I was not going to get any promotions if I didn't. And I was lucky because I could talk about sports, and that's very helpful when you're a woman in a man's world. And I could hold my liquor better than they could. This was very important because socializing in the corporate world, it meant like I remembered everything the day after, and they didn't. So I learned a lot during that time, and I learned that being someone you are not is not a route to fulfillment for yourself. You might have a successful career, and I did. I had a lot of promotions, but I didn't find meaning or purpose in. I worked for Pepsi and M&M's, and I didn't find meaning and purpose in sort of doing business the way I felt like it was done. So I needed something else, and I returned to Iceland to try to find meaning and purpose with my life. And I was lucky enough to soon thereafter find my partner in life, my husband, and we have a 21-year wedding anniversary today.
Wow, congratulations!
Too much personal. Next to it is our daughter. She's 21, and we have a 23-year-old son. And having those two children, I've done nothing that's more important than that. And I've probably learned more from that than anything else. Becoming a mother, having a boy and a girl, finding a partner who has the courage to stand next to a disobedient woman like myself. That's a big part of me in my 30s, and sort of finding my own voice and my values and letting them come through. And that's a constant journey. And if I've learned anything in the leadership journey, it is that we only become as powerful as we become authentic. Meaning, authenticity, truly being who you are, speaking your own voice and values, is the key to true success in life. Maybe you won't be promoted as fast when you're young, when you don't play by the rules of the game, but you will not go very far by trying to be someone else than you truly are. So I have found that I had to quit a few jobs. I had to try many different things. But the red thread throughout my career has been that I have been trying to take one step after another closer to truly letting me be me. And my message to young people is always think about life's most important work. Don't think about I'm going to be in government or private sector or entrepreneur or an activist. Just think about the work in life as everything that comes in your way is an opportunity for you to become closer to who you are meant to be and what you're meant to do. And so let that lead you rather than start your career by I want to be president or I want to be in private sector or let life give you these opportunities to become you. And if you just let that happen, then I think all will be good, at least in the long term. But sometimes I felt a little lost on the way, and I'll be the first one to say, oh yes. Oh, everybody does, but no success comes on the back of only success. If you are anywhere in your life, it is because you've had hardships. So I also learned that welcome the hard stuff, because that gives you an opportunity to define who you are and what you care about, and how you're going to show up in the world, because no one else is going to take care of you but you. You're going to need to decide who you're going to be in this world.
Right.
No one else will decide that for you.
Purpose of your life, right? Mission. Okay.
First time I ran for president, it didn't work out, but I became president of my own life. I knew who I was after that journey. So
let me ask you about that president, the journey into the presidency. So you first ran in 2016, and you came second, was it?
Yes, I was the runner-up.
But anyway, what inspired you to, run for office? You were in public sector and then business sector, and then now an NPO, and then after that you decided to jump into that world. What made you decide?
Well, there's a sincere answer, which is that in 2016, I really didn't think about it. But I had a lot of young people and students I had been a teacher for that started a Facebook petition and thought this was a good idea. And to be honest, I had given so many speeches about leadership, and I've always been interested in that it felt very uncomfortable when young people who I say, don't wait for others to create the world you want. You know, look in the mirror and ask, what am I going to do about the world that I want? Real leaders do that. It doesn't matter if you have a platform or position of power. Just go out and do it. And then all of a sudden they said, you do it, you run now. And then for 3 months I was just in agony and like sweating and thinking like, oh my God, I cannot do this. I don't want to do this. This is not what's in the cards for me. And I was full of fear and imposter thoughts. You know, I've always suffered a lot of imposter thoughts, and I think it's important to say that. I never have thought that I know the answers or know how to do anything I've done in my life. I sort of gain confidence through doing. I just use courage until I gain confidence. And this is important, because if we wait for confidence, which I think a lot of women do, there's a confidence gap. Not a competence gap, but there's a confidence gap. Then we may not ever jump in. And so I try to jump in and find confidence through doing. And I went for it almost because I couldn't figure out, I couldn't write good enough of a Facebook post to say why I wasn't going to do it. You know, I wrote probably 300 versions of it. So I ran for others the first time. But there was a day, 45 days before election day, when the polls said I had 1% in the polls.
1%?
1%. 45 days until election. And everyone asked me, are you going to quit? And that's when I felt like, now I can show who I choose to be in the face of adversity. Like, I don't need to win, but I can show that even if you believe in something, then, and other people don't see it, then the answer is not to quit if you truly believe in it. The answer may be to pivot, to change something about how you're going about it, but the answer isn't to quit. So I went all in and ended up as the runner-up, and I felt so good about it that I was never going to run again. I felt like I was the winner because I went from 1% to nearly 30%.
30%.
And it just felt like, okay, that's my presidential entrepreneurship project. I'm not going to do this again. And then 8 years later, when people also encouraged me, I decided to run myself. So the second time I knew, and for a very clear reason. I believe Iceland has a role in this world. The role to me is and a purpose, a real purpose. That while we are a small country, we are rich in history, and we have told stories since the beginning of stories being written and told. And we have somehow, in spite of being so tiny, rambled upon, I almost think rambled upon because we're not very strategic, solving some of the world's largest problems. How to close the gender gap, how to use geothermal energy and other green sources of energy, how to bring Reagan and Gorbachev together to talk about how to end the Cold War. It wasn't our idea, but we became the location, and that was historic. And how to have some incredible musical talent and theatrical talent and some incredible authors and singers and dancers, and we're 400,000 people, and most of the world knows about us today. They didn't always, and that's because of the creativity of our people. So I think of Iceland as a land of solutions, of creative solutions to some of the world's biggest challenges, and I'm hoping we can use our storytelling capacity to inspire other places to see what is possible in a world that feels at times quite impossible. So that's why I ran the second time. And that's a much better reason when you have your own purpose than when you're answering a call from others.
I see. Yeah, so speaking of that election, was it last year, right? And then you took off, and then I actually, I was checking all the numbers that you had gained. And it was remarkable that you won 33.94% of the vote in the last presidential election. And also, but what was more surprising to me was that, voter turnout was nearly like 80%, 80.8%. People in Iceland are that enthusiastic about politics because I have actually covered politics for a long time in Japan. And it is really hard for hard to get people to vote. And unless they go to the polling station, nothing will change. But in that sense, I think Iceland already has that base ground, the base for that, for democracy.
Well, Iceland is an old democracy, but a young republic, 80 years old. But 930 we started our parliament in this beautiful place in Iceland called Þingvellir, where the European and American plates meet. And so we have an old sort of democratic history of trying to come together to make decisions. But we've been seeing, like everywhere else, voter participation more on the downturn, and in particular with young people. So it was a very big issue to me when I decided to run, because I really believe in generational equality being sort of the call of our times, that we do the right things now so that the young people stand a chance to believe in and have faith in the future that awaits them. I really think that's the leadership call of our times. And I wanted young people to be interested, but I discovered very quickly that they weren't that interested. And I started to think about why is that? And so we did in our campaign some things that were new, and I'm very proud of the fact that we set a record for young people's participation, because that matters to keep a healthy democracy, that young people will go out. But we had to approach it a little differently. One thing we did, we created a special campaign office for young people. It was separate and they were fully empowered. My daughter and her cohort basically ran it. And it was special space just for young people to come in and have conversations the way they want to have them and about what they want to talk about. And I mostly listened. I also gave them my TikTok account and they ran it. And they just told me to show up and do some things, and sometimes I didn't know what it was going to turn into.
You didn't dance, did you?
I danced a little, yeah. I did a little, a few embarrassing things, and sometimes I did not know what that was going to lead to, but they somehow knew that in order to get young people interested, this, for example, was much more powerful than making speeches. What do political candidates do? They go out and make speeches. They wanted to be in conversations. So we tried to do more conversations, then more circles when we actually talked to each other. I listened. They came up with ideas. Sometimes it took them a long time. Some were not so good ideas, but it mattered that they felt empowered. They had a budget, they had a place, they had a TikTok account, and they were allowed to have some fun and use their creativity. And I think this mattered. I also think it matters to talk about the issues that young people care about, the future. And I think the presidency in Iceland is about the future. It is about the long-term reality that awaits the next generation. And so even mentioning things like generational equality as a lens to what leadership is about was important. So I'm very proud of this fact. And I'm also proud of that we had the general elections later in the year for our government, and some people called it the Halla playbook that they were going to run on. So there was some learning from others that young people may want to be approached differently. And we need to rethink politics just like we need to rethink business and rethink education. And there's a lot of room for rethinking how we do things. And I think we allow ourselves to do that. And largely thanks to young people.
I see. I was going to ask about the women, but actually engaging young people are very, very important. And I think it can, the idea of approaching to young people can actually be applied also to Japan as well, because we're, aging society, and people in the politics are always talking about the elderly things and the pension fund and all that.
And those things matter, and we need to take care of people who are getting older and living longer, and we need to ensure their wisdom isn't lost in our societies. But we cannot create the future with all the change that is happening without young people having an active opportunity in shaping it. Yeah. It's their future.
Also, I mean, you're a role model now, I think, for many people, but did you yourself have anyone as your role model? Do you think?
Yeah, I think the most impactful role model for me were the women of Iceland who had the courage to take the day off and be naughty and change the world for me and so many. But Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, the first democratically elected president, was a very powerful role model for me. I was 11 when she was elected, and I remember she was a single mother. And I remember once, and she was a breast cancer survivor, and this is before we televised everything on our phones. And but there was a town hall meeting, and some man asked her, "How can you become president? You're a woman." And then then someone added, and kind of just half a woman, referring to the fact that she had had a mastectomy. And then kind of, this was a town hall and everything went silent, and then she said, well, I intend on leading the nation, not breastfeeding it. And I thought, oh my God. What a rock star. And I just remember, and I thought, so the women on October 24th, women like her for 16 years in leadership who put real issues that matter on the agenda and had the wits and the smarts to use humor and well-chosen words to impact people and did leadership differently from anything that I had seen at that time, had a big impact. And then I'd say my mom. My mom took care of those who society left behind her whole life. And I think, and my dad was an entrepreneur and worked on geothermal energy, and I thought the combination of the entrepreneurship that I received in my very own home and the care that my mom always showed to all those who needed it was sort of a combination that I may not have thanked for when I was young because I didn't always understand it, but when I look back, I think that made me passionate about capitalism or economics with care for people and planet and communities. I think my definition of success became bigger because of the combination of them and the fact that both of them worked purposefully on something that mattered to them was also great role modeling.
Okay, so in that sense, that the economic empowerment is also important for women. I think elevating the status of women. So what do you think about this role of economic empowerment?
One of the most interesting projects I have been involved with was when we were building Reykjavík University. I ran something called Auður í krafti kvenna in Icelandic, or wealth through the empowerment of women and girls. And we put thousands and thousands of women of all ages through very interesting different courses. One course was for 13 to 16-year-old girls to become entrepreneurs. And just 3 days outside of the city with a few of us teaching them how to create an idea and develop a business plan and execute it with games in nature. Just some of them came in just feeling very small and they left feeling very big. And I just saw such incredible transformation happen when you invest in women. And I noticed something fairly early on, that when women create new business ideas, because I then taught a lot, I taught thousands of students entrepreneurship and leadership, and when they so often came with ideas that help make the world a better place. So I started seeing, not only do you have this incredible power in women, just like we had incredible power in nature in Iceland and we turned it into energy, I saw, oh my God, we have incredible power in women and girls and we're not using it to create economic growth or development or new companies or a better society. I saw that, and I saw that they did it with such purpose and meaning. And then I thought, what country wouldn't want to put all that energy to work, to grow its economy and to grow it towards a better world? So to me, the empowerment of women and girls is certainly something that feels close to me as a woman, as a mother, but it is really smart economics. Really is smart economically, and I don't think you can build a strong and healthy country or a world without empowering women and girls. I really don't think so. So, and now we need a better world. Pretty much everything is broken. So maybe we want to try something else, than an all-male leadership approach. And I think it works. And we see a lot of data that shows that companies deliver greater profit, economies grow faster, there is better decision making in the boardroom, there's more peace. All the things that matter get better when we have gender balance. I'm not against men, I just want gender balance. I just want us to sit at the table and reflect the world that we live in and the values that we hold near and dear to us, and a better world will come from that. So for Japan, I think it's your biggest economic opportunity to invest in women.
That's good. That's good. And actually, I want to talk about Japan a little bit because we are here in Japan, and also actually, you talked to Mr. Ishiba, Prime Minister, and you mentioned that he also was quite interested in gender equality. So could you tell us about if that's possible. I don't know.
You're putting me in a bad spot. I asked him a question where he answered in a very Japanese way, where he said, well, in my position, I cannot comment on that. And I will not tell you what that question was either. So I almost feel like saying that. No, we had a wonderful conversation, and he did indeed ask a lot of questions about how Iceland became the #1 country in closing the gender gap. He was genuinely interested, and he even had some ideas that he wanted to test on us. And so I'm very hopeful after that meeting that this is an issue that matters to him, that the fact that we're raising this issue on Iceland Day, and that peace and equality are the two principles that underpin our visit here in Japan. I'm very hopeful that that will move the dial. And very willing to be helpful in whatever way we can to help Japan make the decision to do better here, because it's not about ranking number 118 on one metric by the World Economic Forum, because that's not even a perfect metric. But it is about creating a country that can enjoy economic growth and social progress and be future fit. And it is about creating a society where everyone truly can let their light shine. And it is about creating a world where we work together across genders and generations to do better, because we have to. So it's certainly about women's rights, but to me it's the smartest economic and social progress agenda, and probably the most important global goal number 5. Because I think we will achieve all the others if we get this one right.
Because in Japan, I kind of feel like there are more young people, and many men actually are supportive for this gender parity issues. But the thing is that there are some men, the very conservative men, traditional men, sort of like they feel uneasy about just being pushed towards that goal. How can we sort of like deal with this kind of issue, and how can we, bring them on board? What do you think? That's the, very difficult issue in Japan, I think.
But I think it's important to name it, and I can also tell you that in my prior work, when I was working on climate change, I found older men running companies often very difficult on that agenda. And so I started doing something that I call the daddy-daughter effect. I asked them to bring their daughters to meeting. And you'd be very surprised how much changes when daddy brings his daughter along. Because that's the closest a father will ever feel to the injustice of women and girls not thriving. It's when it's your own daughter. And I learned, and so I think there's something to bringing the next generation into the conversation. And I think it's something about creating space for those men to have that conversation in safety and talk about what is it, why is it that this is something that is difficult. And I think we should let them share what that might be. And there might be some legitimate concerns there, or ideas, or at least an opportunity to help them shift their minds and mind frame maybe on these issues. It's important to have the dialogue and not just think that everybody sees the light. Even in Iceland, we still have people who, I have men asking me sometimes now, is there no place for men anymore? You women run it all. What are we supposed to do? Are we no longer valuable? And all of this, and it's normal. Everybody wants to matter. That's the simple truth I discovered on October 24th in 1975. Everybody wants to matter. So give men an opportunity to matter. So that's one suggestion. The other suggestion I might have is, with us in the women leadership organizations, we created a movement for a while because we would always just be women talking about gender equality. So we said, if you bring a man, the conference fee is free. So all the women brought a man. They forced some men to come. But all of a sudden we went from having maybe a man in the room to 10%, 15%, 20%, 30%. And it changes the conversation. And so I think we need male champions and male allies, and we need gender power to shift norms and cultures inside of us, and by that, shift them in society.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I think that we need to wrap up soon, but do you have any suggestions for Japanese leaders, including both men and women, who want to move the needle?
I ultimately think this is about a decision to make it a priority. And I think that could be very helpful, because one thing I have learned about the Japanese, now this is only day 3 in your country, but I have worked with Japanese people.
Seen a lot of
I've seen a lot of Japan over those 3 days, and it may be hard to get you to say that you're going to do something really brave, because you're very humble people, which I really like. But when you say it, you do it. Like, you get it done. You execute better than anyone else. So I think maybe you need to sort of try to get some kind of a group behind making it a priority. And it shouldn't be just politics, but it's helpful if politics comes along. It should be the business leadership, it should be the civil society leadership, it should be the next generation coming to the table and try to make some kind of a manifesto or a goal or something, you know, go from 118 to 60, I don't know, on a make a goal. Because I think you will deliver it and then some if you set that goal. So I think that's very important. And policies alone, but really do the cultural work, convene dialogues across generations, across genders, male only, not business, government, civil society, and really give people spaces, brave spaces, to rumble with the fact that Japan, this incredible country that can lead on anything they put their mind to, is number 118 on this gender gap index. And is that a satisfactory place to be and likely to drive the economic engine of this country for the next 50 years? Like, we got the world on a better track. To deliver the global goals, you could say, as one framework, or I would just say to be a healthier world with more shared prosperity for all. So I have kind of like a big goal like that. But ultimately, every day I get up to do one very simple thing, to hopefully help more people feel well here. Because if we are okay, then the world will be okay. So ultimately, I get up every day and try to think about how might I contribute to let more people feel good inside out, because I believe the way out is in. And if each one of us really feels empowered, really feels like we have clarity about who we are, what we are here to do, I think we will sort it all out. The solutions exist to all the challenges we have, including peace. We know what we need to do.
You went to Hiroshima.
Yes, we know we don't need, that can never happen again. We know that wars are not going to solve anything. We know that violence begets violence, and that's never the answer. We know that divisions and low trust are robbing us of inner peace and societal peace and democratic health and peace in the world. So I think we know that we are lost. And I don't know a way out other than trying to really focus on my own inner health and that of others, and help more people find the inner strength to pursue this better world. And then we will do it. And we will look back one day and say, we did it. And I believe we will. I think a better world is about to be birthed by women and young people, but it will take a while and it will be painful, and boy was it painful when I gave birth to my first child, but he's a lovely young man. And so is my daughter. So I think these are labor pains, and they might last longer than I wanted my labor pains to last. But we will give birth to a better world because we're too smart, too capable, too strong to fail the next generation by not being the leaders the world now needs.
Thank you very much for your inspiring